Protective asset protection will provide tools to make added protection more attractive and empower your business. Together, we'll help more people gain the sense of security they deserve, because we're all protectors.
Welcome to Daily Drive for Friday, May 9th, 2025. I'm Jamie Butters, Executive Editor of Automotive News in Detroit.
And I'm Kellen Walker in Las Vegas. Today on the show, Stellantis is reportedly close to naming a new CEO. President Trump's trade deal reduces tariffs on most UK vehicles. And BYD plans to sell half of its cars outside China by 2030. Plus, deepfake scams are on the rise everywhere, including the service and parts industry. Rudolph Nieto of Mavsign joins the show to talk about it.
They were laying in wait and just waiting for dealers to not be paying attention.
Let's run through all the news you need to know to keep up in the auto industry.
Stellantis is reportedly nearing the end of its complicated search for a new CEO. According to people familiar with the matter who spoke with Bloomberg News, America's boss Antonio Filosa is emerging as the leading candidate. They say the situation remains fluid, and the board, led by Chairman John Elkann, could end up picking someone other than Filosa. Stellantis initially told investors when CEO Carlos Tavares was ousted in December that its board would appoint a new CEO in the first half of this year. 5 months later, the sources say concern is mounting within the company that a selection needs to be made because decision-making has stalled without a permanent top executive in place. A spokesperson for Stellantis said no decision has been made, and the timing for nominating the new CEO is unchanged. Filosa didn't immediately respond to a request for comment.
The UAW says its rocky relationship with Stellantis has improved tremendously under Filosa. UAW Vice President Kevin Gatinsky is the union's top liaison with Stellantis.
It has been a 180-degree change. I mean, Tavares we couldn't reason with. He had a vision of pulling everything out of this country, we believe, as his actions seem to show. I can tell you the new leadership dealing with Antonio Filosa has been, like I said, it's been a 180. It's been a lot better dealing and working with him. But, I mean, we still have massive challenges.
Now, the union is putting that goodwill to the test with the help of President Trump's import tariffs. It's pressing Stellantis' interim leadership to raise output at several U.S. plants with excess capacity. A Stellantis spokesperson declined to comment on the UAW's calls for more U.S. investment.
British automakers will be allowed to export 100,000 vehicles to the U.S. each year at a reduced tariff rate of 10%. That's under the framework of a trade deal the countries agreed to on Thursday. Since April 3rd, U.S. vehicle imports have been subject to a 25% duty. Tariffs on a wide range of parts began on May 3rd. It's the first such deal since Trump triggered a global trade war with a barrage of levies on trading partners following his return to the White House in January. It leaves in place a 10% tariff on goods imported from the UK, while Britain agreed to lower its tariffs from 5.1% to 1.8% and provide greater access to U.S. goods. The auto tariffs have had an immediate impact on the UK auto sector. Jaguar Land Rover had paused its shipments to the U.S. for a month, though they have since restarted. JLR says it warmly welcomes the deal. Initial news of the announcement sent shares in luxury car maker Aston Martin up 10%.
And BYD is aiming to sell half of its vehicles outside the Chinese market by the end of the decade. That's according to 4 people familiar with the matter who spoke with Reuters. It would be a massive increase, making BYD a rival to the world's largest automakers. Sources say the company would fuel that growth with expansions in Europe and Latin America, even as BYD and all other Chinese brands remain locked out of the U.S. market by trade barriers. One person says BYD executives have outlined the 2030 target to investors in small groups since late last year, emphasizing its Europe expansion as pivotal to hitting the target. BYD did not respond to Reuters' request for comment. And those are today's headlines. So, Jamie, Stellantis is reportedly close to naming a new CEO. American boss Antonio Filosa is emerging as the leading candidate. Why do you think it's taken Stellantis so long to fill this position?
It has seemed that Chairman John Elkann really prefers outside candidates. Sergio Marchionne was not an employee of Fiat before he took it over and led the merger with Chrysler. So there's a sense, that that's his preference and maybe what he wanted. Also, maybe because the company was in trouble, that maybe he felt they didn't have the leadership within to take the company forward. But since being made the COO and the head of North America, Filos seems to be making the right moves. He's made production changes and product changes and marketing moves that kept the dealers happy. There's a lot more goodwill behind him, and North America is still the most important market for Stellantis to make money. If they're doing things right here, that's a good case as any for making him CEO.
Gotcha. Coming up, deepfakes are opening up a new realm of auto finance fraud. We'll hear from Mavsign's Rudy Nieto next on Daily Drive.
Yeah, my name's Jeremy Beaver. I'm at the Del Gran Dealer Group CEO. We have 17 brands in the heart of Silicon Valley, San Francisco, 1,100 team members selling over 28,000 cars a year. Protective has been a partner of DGDG for a long time, and we are just so thankful for everything they do to help us every day. I've been at DGDG for over 15 years, and we've grown as an organization from 3 stores to the 17 we have today, and Protective has been critical in that growth. Not only in the products we sell, but long-term growth strategy through data, through insights, making sure that we are performing at the absolute best every step of the way. I think when dealers are searching for insurance companies or reinsurance companies, there's obviously plenty of choices in the industry. For us, the most important piece when we chose our partner to go with Protective and have a long-term relationship was exactly that, because of the relationship they provide. A very hands-on approach to helping us grow and drive our business every single day is critical, especially in the automotive industry where it's headed, not only with our guests, but with our team, to make sure that every single day we are at level 10. We continue to lean on our partners at Protective to make sure that we are going in the right direction and that we're gonna be absolutely at our best for years to come.
Welcome back to Daily Drive. I'm Jamie Butters with Kellen Walker. Scammers are using artificial intelligence to replicate voices and faces in calls and videos to perpetrate auto finance fraud. Rudolph Nieto is the CEO of digital contracting vendor Mavsign. He spoke with Automotive News senior editor Dan Shine about how these scams are costing dealerships.
Rudy, thanks so much for joining me on the F&I Friday edition of Daily Drive.
Thanks for having me, Dan.
So when we talk about fraud, when it comes to auto finance, fraud, synthetic fraud, it's kind of a whack-a-mole kind of scenario where if something new pops up, the industry smacks it down, and if something new pops up elsewhere. So I want to talk about kind of maybe the latest, and this is called a deep fake. First of all, I guess for the audience, explain what a deep fake is when it comes to auto loans and auto financing.
Well, in a nutshell, a deepfake would be in its current use. I'll just dial back real quick. If everybody recalls the term revenge porn that came out in the late 2010 era before COVID, and people had learned how to use technology to put somebody's face on somebody else's body to shame them or make a statement or something like that. That was one of the early use cases for that kind of technology. So it all started with the advent of generative adversarial networks, probably in the early 2010, 2014, I believe. And then they figured out how to use additional technology, technical term called a variable operational encoder. And so essentially they can make somebody's face, assuming it had enough content provided to contextually add that face to another image. That's how deepfake started. And so where it had that use case, I think during COVID, it really took off where they said, hey, we can actually use this to mimic somebody's face and put them in a situation where they're somebody they're not. And they've curated these images over time. And in parallel, we've all been posting and TikToking and Instagramming way more to where now they've got more content to go make a realistic looking image of people that can probably get away with passing a virtual identity check, essentially.
Yeah. So your face, my image, my
Correct.
Instagram post, a video of you giving a presentation, that could all be
100%.
used.
You could put my face on somebody else and it would look like I'm giving it. The interesting part is the synthetic voice piece has been out much longer, and that's actually the easiest part to do. So even basic scams like over the phone stuff, which it's crazy. Dealers, when they do an offsite deal, typically their sales process is over the phone, and you're like, I mean, that's kind of terrifying. You're calling the person on the phone to verify, like, yeah, they could easily mask that, and so then that's progressed into the video side. I think about 3 years ago, they were smart enough to come up with what we would call reels today, where they would move around and do the things, but it was kind of recorded, and so if you watched it long enough, you'd figure it out. More like Mission Impossible type stuff. And now it's kind of like almost I think they call them. My daughter calls them emojis. Where you can like put an image over your face and you look like that person. So it is kind of funny that the big example is the Tom Cruise one on TikTok, where the guy enhanced his image to look like Tom Cruise and was able to do his mannerisms and stuff.
Right.
And our company's name is Maverick. So, it wasn't done intentionally that way, but I think that's an interesting parallel. So yeah, deepfake is happening. And so the way it would work is there would be other things that they have to do in order to get away with a deepfake, meaning they would have had to go on the dark web and get the driver's license or form of identification that would pass through all the tests. They would need to have acquired an identity that is not paying attention. It could be synthetic. Maybe they find a kid's identity when they're 16, build up some credit over several years, and go for the big hit when they're 20 after they've paid on some accounts and built up their credit. That's an example. So there's a synthetic angle. There's a straight up, smash and grab. Somebody's not paying attention or a data breach, and they create an identity that way. But there's lots of ways to do that. And then that deep fake is the last mile to say, oh, okay, well, we're going to actually go visually verify this person to make sure that it's kosher. And then the deep fake provides that added spoofing of whatever identity they've curated to that point. So the reason deepfake has been working is we've told ourselves during COVID, it's like, oh yeah, just use technology to fix your problem. It's like, I don't know about you, but by the time 2022 came around, I didn't want to see Zoom for the rest of my life, and so I think we've got overly reliant on that technology, and that's what's made us the most vulnerable. And so I think, during the presentation, I was joking about, Tiger King being the most popular show in 2020, which is not a great testament to humanity. But, while we were streaming about crooks like Tiger King, the crooks were streaming about us and understanding how we operate and how we maneuver and training on our identities. And so they were laying in wait and just waiting for dealers to not be paying attention.
So, but there are ways. You have to be pretty smart, but there are ways to kind of detect,
sure,
like some deepfakes. What are some of the things to look for?
Well, since this is for F&I audiences, I would start with, don't shortcut your normal process. It's either a JM&A process or, Ascent or Zurich or whoever else is training you in F&I, AFib, KPA, whatever. You have an interview process. Why would you hijack that on the 20% of deals that aren't going through your four walls? You have higher risk. So actually the need for a great interview is more important on an offsite deal than it is in person, than on an on-site deal at the dealership. So go through whatever your interview questions are and try to ask the same question two different ways and see what they say. That's a basic one, but that requires video F&I, and I think that's a way that a lot of people can quickly flush out the fraud. Right? You pair that with a full biometric with fraud detection technology layered in. It's looking for IP address of where they're coming from, and checking to see if there's any black hat stuff going on, and asking them to obviously raising their hand and doing all that's pretty common. But if you're looking to really beat deepfakes, look for blinks, look for moles getting transposed, look for certain quirks, look for changes in lighting as their face moves around. And there's a number of different pieces like that. But really, just paying attention and being observant. It's basic know your customer stuff. And again, I try to empathize with the F&I industry. And I was in F&I 20 years ago, and I had a lot to do. They've got way more to do now. So if you continue to add more things for them to do, their execution on the things that they were already doing goes down. And so it's like, how do we simplify that? And, I can fast forward to why we see, Mavsign and Maverick working out well, because we actually have a physical secure closing agent in person. And even if the dealer says they followed every step of the process and the dealer's like, you know what, I trust you, but I need to verify and have that last layer. So we come in and we'll find something. And it's usually something benign that they didn't pay attention to. And so we continue to catch those every day. And so we know that people are getting past the deep fakes because it gets to us and two things will happen. They'll spit the hook on they might spit the hook on the initial identity verification links we send them. If we get them on video, for sure. If they're in our video ceremony, they don't necessarily have the ability to go use their emojis, I think I call them, where their facial representations. But then when they know that we have a closing agent going to be there in person to get a thumbprint and an affidavit of identity, that's where we see them bounce. And then we look across and we'll see them pop up at other dealerships potentially. So we know what they're trying to do. So I think it's being observant. Stick to your F&I interview. Don't do a different process just because they're offsite. The technology pieces might be different, but run your play. Don't take the people out of the process just because they aren't taking delivery at your dealership.
And this anti-fraud across the industry only works if everybody kind of communicates. That it's not just it's everyone's problem and everyone needs to kind of share, right?
I think that in and of itself is the biggest problem, which is why I'm happy to be on these calls as many times as you'd like to talk about it. But some cities have really good dealer associations that are synced up tight. I live in Houston. I think they have a great dealer association. I was just in Cleveland earlier this month, and I think they're very conscientious about it. But then some don't always cooperate. My dream, and I think it will become a reality, is as we expand and we go from the 2,000 dealer network that we have now to 20,000, if we got everybody that had a login, we could try to create an alert system that says, hey, we know where these things are happening, or you're just checking to see, hey, this has been used somewhere else, or somebody's tried to do this with the forensic data we have, and that way they would have a flag to know. And the other piece would be, it'd be great to catch these guys. We stop them from stealing the car, but it would even be better that if we had a way to leave some breadcrumbs and catch them in the act, with the PDs to really deter it, because right now they're kind of unchecked.
Rudy, interesting conversation, an ongoing problem in the F&I world. Really appreciate your insights. Thanks so much.
No, I appreciate you having me on, and anything I can do to help. Well, we're going to keep trying to figure it out. They've probably already thought of something else that we need to be coming back at them with. So.
Probably so. Thanks so much.
Rudolph Nieto is the CEO of digital contracting vendor Mavsign. He spoke with our own Dan Shine. That's Daily Drive for today. I'm Jamie Butters.
And I'm Kellen Walker. Thanks to Automotive News executive producer Jake Neer, as well as our own Vince Bond Jr. and John Irwin for their reporting for today's podcast. You can get the latest news on service and parts, executive moves, and everything happening in the auto industry at autonews.com.
Come back over the weekend for my conversation with Ford Global Chief Marketing Officer Lisa Matarazzo about the automaker's manufacturing-focused ads that aired during this year's Kentucky Derby.
We love the fit. Both Derby champions and Ford products embody strength, tradition, and capability, and those are hallmarks of great American brands.
We'd love to hear from you. Let us know what you think of the show and the topics we covered today. Send us an email at dailydrive@autonews.com or leave us a voicemail at 313-444-2774. And if you enjoy the podcast, remember to like, leave a review, and subscribe so you never miss an episode.